You're listening to The Charity Show, the podcast for charity insiders by charity insiders. If you enjoy the show, please take a second to rate, follow or subscribe on your usual podcast platform. And here's what's coming up in episode 23. I'm going to talk to you about Adolescence. There's a lot of hype about it. Have you seen it?
I have seen it. We just actually watched it twice.
Yeah, brilliant. It was a brilliant piece of TV. It has been interesting to see the reaction to Adolescence, and it has thrust a lot of children's charities into the limelight as well. The Prime Minister actually met with the Adolescence creators, charities and young people to discuss all the issues that are raised in the series.
Young people have got an immense amount of pressure on their shoulders at the particular age that they come into contact with the DofE, both kind of academic pressures, mental health pressures, stresses, and then everything that our generation didn't necessarily have to deal with around social media, screen time. In terms of kind of getting cut through, there's no easy way to do it, but just as important an audience for us is, of course, those adults who support those young people, because they are often the first moment at which a young person comes into contact with the DofE, actually. So a lot of our work as a team is communicating with them and providing them with the best possible quality kind of information, things that they can offer to the young people they support to make them see themselves in the DofE and see what it can do for them.
Do you know what? I think you're probably going to get more comments off the back of the fact that you've never watched The Traitors, Piers, than off of anything else. How have you not? How have you missed that?
It's just, I don't know. It's par for the course. I'm ostracised from water cooler moments when I go into the office at the moment. Welcome back to The Charity Show. I'm Piers Townley, PR Manager at the Brain Tumour Charity.
And I'm Tim Bainan, Head of Marketing Engagement at Firefighters Charity. We've got a great show coming up, Piers, as we meet the award-winning comms team from the Duke of Edinburgh Award to find out more about how they are successfully engaging with young people across the UK. So an amazing conversation coming up very shortly. What about you, Piers? Have you got your DofE bronze or your silver or your gold? What have you got, or have you?
I'd like to say I've got all three all the way to the top, but I never did it actually, although all my friends did it around me. But I was, since then, I always loved camping, always loved the expedition, always loved the kind of orienteering things. Absolutely useless at it, but loved it, loved the outdoorsy kind of stuff. I did the air cadets though at that age, so slightly different things. So we did loads of expeditions, went on loads of manoeuvres, also chucked in quite a lot of flying as well. But yeah, my two kids, Jake has just done his bronze and Willow is about to in a couple of weeks' time. So she's all excited, and we're all learning very quickly about blister packages and rehydrated food, which she's turning her nose up at. But yeah, she'll be fine. But yeah, it's a great thing. Can't wait to hear more about it. What about yourself, Tim?
No, well, similar really. I never did it as a kid, but I think my brother did. I think he did his bronze, but I never did. But my kids will be as well. So William's likewise. He's just about to get himself up and running on that front. He's with the Army Cadets, so the rivals to the Air Cadets, I think. Are they really? I don't know.
They were. I don't know whether they still are, but yeah, they were back then.
Anyway, so yeah, he's about to kick it all off there as well. But it is an amazing thing and a fantastic charity and organisation. And the team we're about to, or our listeners are about to listen to, are fantastic. So we'll find out much more about in a few minutes' time. But all this conversation about how we engage with young people just inevitably makes me feel a bit out of touch. I don't know about you, Piers, getting a bit old now.
Every single minute of every single day, Tim.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Likewise. But I want to talk to you about Adolescence. There's a lot of hype about it. It's been on the telly. Have you seen it? Have you watched it on Netflix?
I have seen it. We just actually watched it twice.
Wow.
Once was just myself and my other half, and then it's with the kids as well. I got told off the first time round because I kept jumping up and go, look at that camera angle. How have they done that? Is that a drone? Is that? I was told to shut up and just watch it. But yeah, loved it. And loved it even more the second time round, noticing all the little bits and bobs in it.
Yeah. I watched it all the way through, all 4 episodes, thinking that it was like the film 1917, that it was shot in one take, but there were cuts, you just didn't see them. I didn't realise until afterwards that it was actually genuinely one take. So incredible feat of television production there.
When he goes from the body cam, when he goes up from the body cam up to the drone shot and then back down again, just like wow.
Amazing.
Yeah, very clever.
Very clever.
And God knows how you storyboarded that, because if there's one mess up, you've got to start again. I don't know how everyone got involved, but incredible acting from some of the youngsters in there as well as the established actors.
Yeah, brilliant. It was a brilliant piece of TV, and it's got me thinking as well about. Obviously, we're talking to the DofE guys today, and they work with young people all the time, and very close to that community and what's going on in that community at the moment. And it has been interesting to see the reaction to Adolescence, and it has thrust a lot of children's charities into the limelight as well over the last few weeks. The Prime Minister actually met with the Adolescence creators, charities and young people to discuss all the issues that are raised in the series during a meeting that focused on sort of rethinking adolescent safety. He invited them all to Downing Street. And some of the charities that were invited included, I'm just reading from the list here, the NSPCC, Movember, Beyond Quality, Children's Society, as well as a young person who shared their own experience of becoming immersed in similar online content to the young lad who is at the heart of the adolescent story. And also joining the Prime Minister, there were representatives from Netflix, Tender Charity, who provided resources and guides for parents, carers and teachers on the issues explored in the programme, as well as Interfilm, the charity enabling the free viewing in schools via its Interfilm Plus schools streaming service. Fantastic initiative, by the way. I think that's great that it's being opened up to schools as well. So a really important conversation there around the whole subject. And it has been fantastic not only to hear that conversation and see it, but to see the children's charities are getting involved in that conversation as well. So our conversation today around young people, amazing to see charities getting involved in it.
And interestingly, Tim, and I didn't realise till we started to speak to them, but the DofE has quite a substantial presence and programme actually in the prison system and the young offenders system and the rehabilitation as well. So we'll find out more about that as the conversation develops.
How do you cut through the noise and truly engage young people in a cause? Well, the team at Duke of Edinburgh's award has cracked it, and they've recently been named Team of the Year at the Charity Comms Inspiring Communicator Awards. Today, we're joined by Katie Bamber, Head of Communications, and Laura McIntosh, Head of Brand Marketing, the brilliant comms leads behind DofE's success. In that first half of the interview you're about to hear, we'll talk about how they've transformed the way the charity connects with young people, what's working, what isn't, and what lessons other charities can take away. Then, after a quick break for some third sector news, we'll dive into the challenges of reaching diverse audiences, the power of storytelling, and what it really takes to run an award-winning charity comms team. It's a fascinating conversation for anyone working in charity communications, youth engagement, or just looking for inspiration on how to truly connect with a young audience. Laura and Katie, welcome to the Charity Show. Fantastic to see you. To start with, perhaps the first thing we should do is just if you guys could just introduce yourselves for us and tell us a little bit about your roles at the Duke of Edinburgh's Award.
I'm Laura McIntosh, so I'm Head of Brand Marketing at the Duke of Edinburgh's Award, and I co-lead the engagement team with Katie, who's going to introduce herself. So Katie looks after the communication side and I look after the brand marketing side. Within my kind of remit, I have digital engagement, I have creative content, and also a small kind of brand marketing team, which again is a very kind of new function for us.
Yes, and my name's Katie Bamber. I'm the head of communications at the DofE. As Laura says, we are one engagement team with two heads, and we're very much a big integrated team. But under my direct management sits our media and PR team, fundraising communications, network and internal communications, and also our youth engagement team, who manage our fantastic youth ambassador programme.
Well, it's fantastic to speak to you both today. DofE is massive in my house. My daughter is about to go off on her DofE, bronze DofE in 2 weeks' time. And she's more nervous about what they're going to eat of an evening and where's the makeup mirrors going to go and all that sort of stuff. But she's looking forward to that. I just wanted to congratulate you both on behalf of DofE for winning Team of the Year at Charity Comms Inspiring Communicator Awards. I'll go to you, Laura. But how did that feel as a team? How did that feel as an organisation to win that?
I'll just say thank you. Thank you for that, because I think it's still settling in a bit. Quite honestly, I was really shocked because there's such a high caliber of, the other teams that were kind of within the, who were shortlisted, just had, fantastic stories, like amazing impact. Not that we don't, but I was, you just don't expect to kind of win those things. So when we did, it was, just a massive boost, I think, to us personally, but also to everyone as in the team, because everyone's played a role in terms of achieving that. Within, and you'll know, is that you're often kind of that kind of firepower behind the scenes in a lot of ways. So you're kind of supporting your colleagues. I see our role within the charity was kind of twofold. So one, you're developing and driving activity and activations that are going to be supporting and directly laddering up to those strategic objectives, but then you're also there to be kind of supporting your colleagues and in terms of their communications and marketing. So it's that balance between the two, and often you're the driver behind it. You don't necessarily kind of get that recognition. So I do think that was really important for the team to be recognised, to be seen, to have their work really valued. It's busy. It's like everyone's kind of dealing with 100 things every day. And I think just to take that moment to pause to say, actually, we're doing a good job. And, that's being recognised as, meant a lot to us.
Would you echo that, Kate?
Yeah, I'd echo everything Laura said. It sounds a bit ridiculous to say it hasn't sunk in, but because we haven't won an Oscar or a Nobel Prize or anything, but that I know of. But I think we didn't expect it, and yet when you actually look at the sheer kind of breadth of what we've delivered as a team, and the quality of what we've delivered, and the diversity of what we do to support our colleagues and the young people we support, and then when you combine that with the fact that we're such a new team, and the majority of people have only been there maybe a couple of years, a lots have been here less. It's let us kind of pause, reflect on what we've actually achieved. And exactly as Laura says, and you two will both know, it's so flat out a lot of the time in comms teams. Finding that time to actually think, oh, look at what we did. That was really good. What can we learn from it? How can we pat each other on the back and celebrate it is extremely difficult. So that to have that opportunity has been lovely. And I hope it's been a real kind of morale boost to the team as well. Just recognition like that.
Well, what do you think caught the judges' attention? Was it a particular campaign? Was it a particular approach? What do you think made it stand out for this award, Katie?
I think what's so interesting about it is there isn't one sort of killer moment. There were multiple, and they were very, very different. And so the obvious thing to mention would be our podcast, Navigating Now, which Laura was more involved with than me, but it was a really fantastic achievement because we'd never done anything like that before. We wanted to do something that was actually authentically steered by young people from the outset. So not as just saying, oh, here are some young people doing something that we've asked them to do, but that they were actually guiding every element of it, from the themes right through to the soundtrack, to hosting, to narrating it. And it's just been extremely successful, really high number of downloads. I think we're nearly at 100,000 now, is it?
We've surpassed it.
We've surpassed it. And it was nominated for an ARIA award for the impact category. So that was a fantastic achievement. Equally, you then look across and we've launched a virtual engagement program that we didn't have as of a year ago. It's called Connect, Share, Inform. And obviously we've got nearly 400 staff dispersed all over the UK, all kind of coming to terms with hybrid or remote working, and with an appetite to feel really kind of connected to their colleagues. And we've established that program of internal events purely to do that. And we've had fantastic feedback, really high attendance numbers from staff. And that's the kind of work that doesn't always get the glory it deserves, because beyond that group of people, it's not seen. And the impact is only felt by those people. And yet it's those people who are sort of pushing forward the charity's work. So I'm really personally proud of our network and internal comms team for delivering that. That's just kind of giving two ends of the spectrum, but there's a lot more than that. Laura might have some other highlights she'd want to pull out.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of the breadth and, as you say, kind of the newness of the team. Like, we had to kind of come together really quickly. We were recruiting at the same time, and everyone knows kind of how much time that takes up to find the right talent to come in. We're trying to kind of set up ways of working internally, and how do we all, we're setting up new functions, and how do they work with the rest of the team, the rest of the charity. So there's a lot of kind of organising to do behind the scenes too. But on the kind of breadth of work, we are also, as a charity, we're really ambitious, and have only the last few years in terms of really developing our external affairs offer and relationship program. There's so much to do with that. Or public fundraising as well is an area that we're growing. And again, we didn't have a public fundraising team until probably a year and a half ago. So we've got all these new ambitions kind of across the charity that engagement is fully integrated with. We might be kind of doing these things for the first time too. So it's that sort of kind of learning and taking that more entrepreneurial approach to things, being quite willing to do test and learn. Test and learns come become a bit of a kind of buzz phrase across the DofE, because you might not expect that for a almost 70-year-old charity as well. But it's, it's nice to kind of be in that sort of progressive environment. So yeah, trying to juggle all those things and, obviously kind of make them a success. Yeah, it's been no easy feat, but it's great to, as I said before, kind of have that recognition for it and give us that chance for celebration across the team.
That's really inspiring from both of you. I think it demonstrates how Marcom's teams across the third sector have had to expand sideways, so that the breadth of what they do is no longer confined to what it was 5-10 years ago. It's all sorts of mediums, it's all sorts of campaigns, it's a whole spectrum that has increased for those sort of teams.
I was going to ask you, Laura, about just exactly that, really, in terms of what has changed and actually crucially why it's needed to change in order to get the success that you've had and to make the advances that you've had. Is it because that the way the charity has had to engage with young people has had to change because of the way in which young people engage with media these days has changed? Is that, as has one led to the other?
I think that, I think that's definitely an element of it. I mean, the stimulus is going to be from Youth Without Limits, which was our strategy, which was set out in 2020 and around much more of an ambition to be more for young people. So moving from a program that young people do to being a youth charity brand. And I think that's the trajectory that we've been on, so that we can then amplify their interests and their thoughts and their opinions, and how can we speak with young people and for young people in many different aspects. Obviously what we do is our core product is around doing a DV program and that holistic experience and impact that young people kind of gain from that. So that absolutely hasn't changed, but how do you evolve that? How do you make it relevant for young people today? How do you, the numbers kind of demonstrate there's no kind of slowing down in terms of appetite for that. So how are we kind of keeping up with what young people need for today? So there's, it's been like a number of things. And then I suppose one on the fundraising side, DofE isn't necessarily kind of top of mind in terms of like a charity that you think of necessarily for supporting. There's some misconceptions in terms of maybe how we're funded or, what we're here to do. So there's, that's a whole kind of new stream for us to be one kind of getting out there. We are a charity that, we do rely on fundraising and we want to kind of diversify those income streams and develop more of a supported community. So that's very much like looking at the long-term impact of diversifying income across for the charity. So it's that Youth Without Limits, but also kind of that longer term trajectory that the charity's on.
Sure. And Katie, thinking about young people today, I mean, Piers and I have both got teenage children, and we know how sort of demands on their time from school, from friends, from clubs, from other outside extracurricular activities and all that kind of stuff, plus all the demands on their time in terms of social lives. How does the DofE and how do you make sure you're heard above all that noise?
Yes, that's a great question. It's really interesting that you should say that, because we were looking back at how we prepared for our last strategy many years ago recently. I actually wasn't really involved at that point, but Laura was and lots of our colleagues were. And looking at kind of all those sort of rivals for young people's attention and thinking about other youth membership organisations and all that. But actually, when we looked at it more brutally now, it is all about competition for their time. Young people have got an immense amount of pressure on their shoulders at the particular age that they come into contact with the DofE, both kind of academic pressures, mental health pressures, stresses, and then everything that our generation didn't necessarily have to deal with around social media, screen time, and all of that. But even 5 years ago, that wasn't at the forefront. That's how fast paced it's all been. In terms of like how we find that area, I mean, to me, every single year our participation figures are rising, and that's partly, in no small part at all, down to our amazing operations and strategic programs colleagues who are like doing everything in their power to kind of break down barriers and make sure young people can take part wherever they are. Equally, it wouldn't be happening if there wasn't an appetite for it, and not just an appetite amongst parents and carers and leaders and teachers and all those people who know that it's a good thing for their young people. The reality is, I'm just thinking back to myself as a teenager. It wouldn't have mattered to me if my parents wanted me to do it. I would have been like, no, I want to, I actually did do my bronze DofE, but if I didn't want to do it, I would certainly have made that clear. The truth is there is appetite amongst young people, and I think part of that's because of the situation they're facing at the moment. The DofE is like a really a really clear framework that lets them have a choice in the way they wouldn't at school. So they're not being told, go into this classroom, study this. They're being told, here's the 4 sections you need to complete, but it's up to you. Like, choose your activities. Is there something you really want to further? Is there something you really want to challenge yourself with a little bit or explore? Is there a cause that you're particularly interested in volunteering for? And they can do that at their own pace in the way that kind of works best for them. And I think, without necessarily thinking of it this way, young people are kind of craving that social connection and that ability to kind of create ties with their community and have structure and motivation that isn't just about sitting behind a desk in a classroom or being on social media or having to revise all the time. So I feel like there's still a real appetite there. I mean, in terms of kind of getting cut through, there's no easy way to do it. And I have to say, like, you've talked a little bit there about the channels that young people use and the way we engage with them, but just as important an audience for us is, of course, those adults who support those young people, either by running a local community organisation or being a decision maker or a teacher in school, or parents and carers of young people, because they are often the first moment at which a young person comes into contact with the DofE, actually. And they are like an amazing network of advocates for us. And so a lot of our work as a team is communicating with them, and in particular when it comes to our adult volunteers, providing them with the best possible quality kind of information, materials, sort of things that they can offer to the young people they support to make them see themselves in the DofE and see what it can do for them. But yes, I feel like it's a very challenging time to be a young person today, and they're navigating challenges that none of us here really can claim to have been through. So talking to young people, listening to them is obviously a massive part of what we do. And I mentioned briefly earlier that we have youth engagement sits within our team. That's a massive part of underpinning pretty much every strand of our work, because there's no point us deciding this is what we reckon young people think. We actually have to talk to them and understand what it is that they're kind of battling and what they need at the moment.
I think it's really, you might have seen earlier this week around I think it was the New Britain Project kind of came out with research around essentially, I suppose that backlash, maybe that feels like too strong a word, but that actually young people want more regulation in terms of social media. They want to have those opportunities to be doing things in person. It's all a balance, isn't it? And that's what life's about. So how can we be supporting young people to be doing that and empowering them to kind of make their decisions, giving those opportunities? And I think that's what the DofE kind of really leans into that conversation.
That goes back to, I think you made quite a powerful point, Katie, Laura, earlier, because if you read the popular press, you'd come away thinking that young people aren't bothering to engage with anyone. They're apathetic. They're all the labels that are generally bandied around, and yet you're saying your participation has increased year on year. So it's not quite the picture that I think that most people are getting the impression of. And as an organisation, you've had to adapt, as you say, Katie. You've had to lean in to ask what they need and what they want. Do you think, away from, say, Marcoms or the engagement side, as a charity as a whole, what's the biggest adaptation you've had to do? It's obviously a very different organisation than it was back in 1956. What do you think, Katie?
It's certainly, I mean, that's a massive question. There's so much I could talk about. It certainly is a very different organisation, although I have to say probably the spirit is still there, which is about giving young people opportunities they're not always going to get from a textbook, no matter who they are, no matter where they're from. That said, being realistic, there weren't girls involved at the very beginning. Classic kind of charity story. It's very, although they did become very involved very soon after. I think the strength of the DofE programme throughout those decades has been that it's an overarching structural framework, but it isn't prescriptive. It doesn't tell young people, this is what you're going to do, go and learn to bake or play football. And so that's allowed it to sort of change as the lives of the young people have changed over the years. So back when I did my bronze many years ago, I think I learned to play the oboe or something like that. I don't know why. I decided I was going to try that, and I borrowed an oboe off from like a family friend and had a go at learning it. And I was dreadful at it, but I improved enough to get my bronze award, which was good. And I've never picked it up again, obviously, because that is a poor example. Because in other areas of the DofE, you meet young people whose skills go on to be like their passion for life and completely transforms their life. One of our alumni, John Watts, he did his DofE in Feltham Young Offender Institution many years ago, cook as his skill, and is now an incredibly successful cook, has produced books, is a chef, is amazing and inspiring. So let my story not be the overarching one there, which is very poor. However, the reason I made that point is because now you're going to get young people doing esports for their skills section, for example, making podcasts, skateboarding and doing a million different things for their DofE that would have been completely unrecognisable to those young people 70 years ago. That said, it's not like the charity certainly isn't kind of resting on its laurels and just assuming that will allow for all the changes that are going on in the world. Just over the last few years, we've reinvented updated our programme requirements around our expedition section of the award, for example, around our residential section. We've done that in consultation with thousands and thousands of our volunteers and participants. And because we want to make sure that it's absolutely built into those kind of requirements that any young person should be able to do their DofE, that an expedition should be adaptable for a young person, regardless of any additional needs they might have, any particular challenges they might have. There should be a way to make that section work for them while maintaining the same level of challenge and the same outputs for the young person at the end. So this is kind of at the forefront of our work all the time at the moment, is where can we break down more barriers? Where can we make sure that young people who might not currently have access can get access, whether that's through kind of tailored funding to support them in their organisation, whether it's through making sure that more prisons and young offenders institutions are running the DofE. Wherever we can find young people who might not previously have had the opportunity, is there a way to kind of make it work for them? I feel like I went a bit all over the houses there, Laura. Is there anything you'd add to that?
No, I think it was really comprehensive, as you say. And I suppose what I don't want to kind of lose within the conversation is that I think the essence of what young people are looking for at that particular, and I speak on behalf of myself, as I've been a young person, everyone has, is around that hasn't necessarily changed over the last 70 years. So that, that need to kind of like be building your confidence, to get that sense of achievement, that self-belief. How do you kind of build that resilience within yourself? How do you kind of broaden your horizons, and you're meeting new people that you might not come into contact with, that sense of belonging? All those things would have been like underpinned the original DofE back in 1956, but they're really, really, really important today. So whilst the kind of mechanics of it, absolutely kind of reflects and adapt, and we progressed, but like I think why people kind of feel that it's so kind of ingrained and respected and valued within society is because it speaks to that stage of life where, whatever the kind of challenge was in your environment, like your needs are going to be very similar to a young person back in 1956.
That's good. Good to hear we've got something in common with generations gone by. That's good to hear.
Piers' point around kind of young people being like, the feckless young people, that's centuries old. People have been saying that about young people. I wish young people should be doing this. They don't know what they're talking about. They're lazy, they're this, they're that. I mean, my goodness, that's been like an ongoing kind of narrative. And so that's not new either, but it's just kind of framed in a different way these days around, because we have social media, because we have kind of these other kind of elements to our society. But yeah, that's the same narrative.
I think it's every parents' right to moan about their children not knowing what it's like.
It is, but it's also that the young people's interests and skills and passions are fast outpacing the older generation's ability to understand them as well. As you mentioned esports, you mentioned podcasts, you mentioned all the multimedia things that can count, they can go towards their skill part of the Duke of Edinburgh. These are things that not necessarily were big before, but the organisation's adapted to actually acknowledge that that's what a lot of young people are into these days.
What a fascinating insight into the challenge of shaping your comms to reach a young audience. Amazing to hear from the two of them. We've got part 2 of that interview coming up in a bit, in which we'll find out Katie and Laura's top tips for improving your youth engagement. But before we get to that, let's take a look at some third sector news. What have you got this week, Piers?
Well, actually, something jumped out at me because in a previous life, I was able to interview Claudia Winkleman, but I'm also very well aware of the news and the noise that is created around the Traitors show. I'm ashamed to admit I've not actually seen it, but it's on my list of things to see. But Claudia is also going to be part of the War Child's annual Spring Clean auction, which is a celebrity auction that takes place between the 3rd and the 24th of this month. And her favourite cardigan, her favourite jumper from the Traitors show, is one of the prizes that eager fans can get hold of. So alongside lots of other celebrity type prizes. We can get tea with Gillian Anderson, for example, lots of music orientated prizes. You've got a chance there to take part in the auction and bid for Claudia's Traitors jumper. So, what could be better in this week's news?
Wow, Claudia's jumper. Do you know what? I think you're probably going to get more comments off the back of the fact that you've never watched The Traitors, Piers, than off of anything else. How have you not? How have you missed that?
It's just, I don't know. It's par for the course. I'm ostracised from water cooler moments when I go into the office at the moment. I try and divert the conversation onto other things.
Oh, it's good telly. It is good telly. You can see why it's been so successful. It is good. You must go and watch. You got to go back to the first series. Go and jump on the iPlayer and.
I think I'm going to have to. Yeah, let's get a binge evening sorted out. I think.
Yeah. So I've got as we're sort of this episode sort of focusing on young people. I've spotted an article in the Telegraph this week. And it's one actually I'm just kind of taking with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because there seems to be quite a few surveys going about at the moment talking about how young people, their relationship with charities. But the Telegraph's article says that young people are turning their backs on giving to charities in favour of travel and other experiences. So the article says 65% of Gen Z, those aged between 13 to 28, are instead prioritising travel, food, arts and live music, according to a survey. The research carried out by MasterCard found that 6 in 10, 61%, plan to tick off a bucket list experience this year. Not too sure how many 13-year-olds have got a bucket list, but there you go. It comes as data reveals the proportion of people in Britain making charitable donations has fallen to a near decade low. The Charities Aid Foundation reported that just half of people in the UK made any kind of donation. In 2024, 36% of 16 to 24-year-olds donated or sponsored a person for charity, a significant decline from 55% in 2017. So this is fascinating stuff, and as the article goes on, and there's lots of quotes from CAF and from others in the piece. So check it out if you're interested. But as I say, there do seem to be conflicting surveys and things going on there. Some will tell you that we're giving's on the up and that young people are continuing to give. This one though seems to say the opposite. So really interesting. There you go. Conflicting stuff, but apparently young people prefer to go travelling and fulfill their bucket list than give to charity.
Yeah, interesting figures there, Tim, isn't it? We keep coming across this with various episodes that we have. Before the news break, we heard from Katie and Laura about how the Duke of Edinburgh's award is mastering the art of engaging young people. Now, in the second half of our conversation, we're diving deeper into the challenges of reaching diverse audiences, the power of storytelling, and what it really takes to run an award-winning charity comms team. Let's get back to it.
Okay, I'd love to dig into a little bit of the specifics, guys, if that's okay, in terms of your comms work and the way things work, and also picking up on the fact that obviously young people today live on their phones, as we all know. I kind of difficulty getting my kids to put them down and actually pay attention at dinner time as they're scrolling away as we're trying to eat our food. In terms of digital engagement and social media in particular, how have you gone about sort of tackling the challenges of communicating in that space? Again, there's lots of noise in that space, we know, and being heard above that noise is difficult. But also at the moment, obviously, we know there's lots of challenges around social media in terms of things like, ethically, how charities are positioning themselves when decisions are made by people like Meta and X in terms of how they monitor and moderate their platforms and so on. How have and how are DofE approaching that challenge? Are you thinking about focusing on specific platforms, dropping others, or how do you approach social media these days?
Yeah, I would say it's not easy, and I would say it's kind of constantly monitoring, because there is constant change. I think having young people's and our audience's interests at the heart of all of our decisions, obviously supported by our values, is really important, and thinking about that. So we've been looking at the different social channels we're on, and how we're serving our audiences and how we're engaging with our audiences across them, and how we can do more to be kind of tailoring that content and what we're sharing to kind of suit those audiences and those environments. Obviously kind of the ongoing discussions around X, I think every organization is having those. So it's like, who are we reaching on X? What's the kind of the right content to be sharing on there, but then how are we reaching other audiences across other platforms? So it's quite nuanced. As I said, things are changing, so we have to kind of keep abreast as much as we can, like in terms of what those changes are and what they mean for our audiences, and just keep that kind of constant review. We're not on TikTok at the moment. It's something that we want to be on TikTok as much as we can. We just haven't had the kind of capacity within the team to do it properly. But that's definitely kind of an ambition for us, and very much kind of learning from others across the charity sector who've done it brilliantly, but also kind of recognize we can't kind of start something but not have the resource to be able to do it. So that's kind of one thing. So we do have quite a small kind of list of channels at the moment that we are on. So we are on X, across Meta with Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and LinkedIn. But YouTube for us is much more kind of a hosting platform rather than a channel. So it's kind of how can we be looking at those channels that we are on. Yeah, and as I said, kind of making sure we're kind of getting the right content, right information, and serving our audiences.
I think that's really fascinating, and I think for a lot of charities facing very similar situations, and I think TikTok scares the hell out of a lot of people in terms of you're absolutely right. You have to be prepared for it, and you've got to have a content plan for it, and you've got to be able to sustain that over time as well. It's coming up with the creativity and the ideas for that I think is quite daunting for a lot of charities.
I just completely agree with that. That you've got to be ready to do it well. And I was just going to add to what Laura said, that like a lot of charities, we kind of face that challenge of the fact that we're many things to many audiences. So we're a charity first and foremost. We're a youth charity supporting young people, and we want to use our channels to that effect. We want to use our channels to talk to the young people that we support. But equally, we are running a programme that is of a very, very high kind of standard and quality. And there are occasions where we have a responsibility to get our messages out to the broadest audience, when it might relate to sort of changes in our programme requirements or something that's happened externally that might affect kind of how we should be doing the DofE. And so that's always something that there's always that kind of two-sided thinking, isn't there? I think there's lots of charities that are probably in that space, mental health charities, other charities where they've got that dual focus of needing to think about the platforms and the values and how they align and all the rest of it, and thinking, practically speaking, we need to get the information out. So that's been a big part of like Laura's thinking as well recently. The only other thing I was going to add was I can't imagine there are many participants listening who will be listening to the podcast, but it's, even though we are not formally on TikTok, the DofE is big on TikTok, in that you can find a lot of brilliant stuff from young people that they've made themselves, and it is hilarious. We really enjoy seeing that, and it's like the kind of candid lived experience of being on your expedition or whatever.
Is that something you embrace? Because that sort of user-generated content, that's the stuff that has, more often that's the stuff that goes viral. That's the stuff that goes viral, really gets engaged definitely with. Yeah, is that something that you embrace and welcome?
Well, 100%. It's absolutely testament to, like, going back to the comment about earlier about young people being portrayed as feckless or lacking kind of creativity or proactivity. It's just nonsense. And you can see it in a million different ways. And we see it all the time through the DofE. But even that, some of that stuff, the content that those young people are creating is genuinely brilliant, hilarious, creative. We'd love to be able to engage with it more, I think, when we Laura. And we do work with our youth ambassadors and other young people to generate their own content a lot of the time as well through our channels, rather than sort of telling them what to say. But yeah, we are aware of our profile on TikTok, because we're part of the national furniture in that sense. There's us, the charity, and then there's, at every moment of people's lives, the touch points they're having with the DofE, their experience of doing the DofE, etc. Sorry, Laura.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, there's those brand implications, aren't there? Because how you're becoming more fun and more humorous, and how do you then, you're balancing that with the credibility of an award that kind of builds those really important skills for life and work and all of those. So it's how we are kind of developing our Youth Without Limits brand to have the right kind of tone that kind of speaks to those different audiences, but obviously has that consistency and is really authentic, I think, as well. But yeah, that's why I think, rather than say the DofE coming out and saying that, actually young people doing it and talking about their experiences, and, that is, a much better I suppose, reflection of the experience and reality than necessarily kind of what the charity can come through. You know, the DofE kind of lives and breathes, and, you know, we talk about the hearts and minds of, you know, all of our different audiences across the UK, and that's where the kind of real action happens. And, you know, as much as possible, we want to kind of amplify that than, you know, what we're kind of saying is a great experience. It's like, well, go and see it because this young person's had it, or this person's kind of laughing about it, or finding it the most challenging thing they've ever done, or they're kind of falling headfirst in a mud pile, or whatever it is. But essentially, they're, you know, it all kind of adds to that richness, I think, of the experience and the charity.
Yeah, and that would really resonate with people as well, though, wouldn't it? That youth content, basically, the people that are doing the DofE, making their own content. That kind of answers my next question, Katie, which was, what do we think, or what do you think charities make as the biggest mistake of engaging young people? But it's probably just assuming that you know what they want.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I'm not saying we've got it perfect or right at all. We absolutely haven't. There's loads more we would love to do, and we've come on like absolute leaps and bounds in the last few years. I'm sure Laura would agree, just being given that additional resource to do this kind of work. But yeah, I think just like with it, whoever your beneficiaries are, whoever the audiences are you're trying to talk to, it's about not assuming, not jumping to conclusions about what their experience is and what they best need from you to support them. You know, it's very simple, really. Like, talk to people, listen to them, have them authentically feed into and steer your work. Don't just talk the talk, but actually walk the walk. And that's something that's like been really rewarding about working at the DofE and kind of kept me here for so many years so far, because I think there is a real commitment from the very top to do that, and that's what you want to see, isn't it? When you go to work in the morning, is feeling like you're doing things the right way and not just ploughing kind of resource into stuff that may or may not work. And yeah, but that doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, there's lots more that we can and should be doing, I think.
Sure. And Laura, on a similar vein, and I'm just thinking about the kind of advice that you guys could potentially offer our listeners and people who may come from charities of all shapes and sizes, and sort of regardless of what resources you might have available or what teams you might have. If you're a part of a charity in which young people is a core audience for you and part of your work, what are the sort of key tips or the first sort of nuggets of advice you would offer to a charity in terms of how you should and the simple practical steps you could take to better engage with young people?
I mean, yeah, it's hard not to kind of repeat what Katie just said, because I do think that kind of understanding and, yeah, just not assuming is really important, and being really authentic, I think, as a brand is really important. So that kind of transparency, that not kind of molding to kind of think about how you should be represented to a young person, essentially, or kind of going down any sort of stereotypes. It's around being kind of true to yourself as the brand, and then being kind of respectful of understanding, to be respectful, understanding and listening to what young people want to hear from you. And you can do that really cost effectively as well. I think, you know, you don't have to kind of spend loads on like a massive research project. As Katie said, there's a huge amount of desk research that's out there anyway that you can capitalize on, you know, we do. And then you can do that sort of kind of corridor testing for, you know, various different kind of ideas or aspects that you have. You can try and do things as nimbly as possible. You can spend kind of a small amount of money in terms of like qual research. So I would just kind of explore all different options, and kind of, you can have the foundations from the desk research, but you can get, you know, everything else relatively cost effectively. I would say, you know, we do. When I started at the DofE, we were a team of, I think we're about 5, you know, and that was communications at the time. We didn't really have a marketing function. We had marketing services, capabilities, but it was really kind of slim. So, and now we're almost, I think we're around like 30 people across engagement. So I've kind of seen it from both sides, from all sides. Although what I would say is, like, you never have enough resource. You never have enough for what you do. And you're always kind of trying to prioritize and juggle, no matter what size your team is.
Sure.
Sorry, Tim. I was just going to say, over the years, the thing I've heard the most is young people need to see themselves in the materials and the stories that you're putting out. And if they don't see themselves, they're never going to believe me as their teacher saying, no, this is definitely for you. You should definitely get involved in this. They're going to have made their own assumptions. And that's something I think we think about a lot. And Laura's got an amazing creative content team that sits in her side of the team who go out and find stories, essentially, from young people around the country and different organisations who are running the DofE in maybe a bit of a different way, or maybe they're adapting it so that more and more of their young people can actually take part. that to me is like the most powerful content we produce. As you said earlier, there's nothing more powerful actually than just hearing a young person say in their own words, this is for you, or this is why I did it, this is what I've got from it, and it's been amazing. There's nothing that we could put into writing or in any other form that would have that same impact.
So coming on to our final few questions here, what's the next for the team? What's next for the engagement? Do you have some innovation, some more plans on the horizon for the rest of 2025?
Well, because we kind of hit the ground running back in 2023 when we reformed. I'd come back from a year on maternity leave, so kind of came back to this kind of new structure, new team, new everything, and like launching straight into recruitment and delivering a podcast and youth voices research and the This Is Youth, the general competition and celebration. So there was so much to do. And actually what we want this year is to set those foundations. So we're kind of going back to basics really. So all the different functions that we've set up around actually how do we expand on, say, from a brand marketing team, our audience insights, that's really fundamental to everything we do. So all those kind of really key things we want to enable the teams to have that space to do. Because in the background, we're kind of planning, we'll have a new strategy launch next year. So that's kind of a fairly hefty thing for us. And also we've got our 70th anniversary next year. So there's going to be kind of lots of different celebration moments across the year. And obviously engagement's going to be really kind of integral to all of those. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that nothing's going to be happening. There's a lot still happening. So I keep kind of telling my team, no, we're definitely going to have a bit more time to do those thoughtful pieces. And they're still kind of rushed off their feet. So I'm trying to, as much as possible, and I guess this comes back to the team of the year is around, how much we can support our team, how we can enable our team to kind of have the time to do their best work and be prepped to do their best work. So that's what we kind of want to aim to do this year. We're not going to be doing a new podcast this year. We're thinking about taking away those kind of bigger shout moments so that we can kind of really build up and shout next year.
Fantastic. And that segues nicely into my final question. And before I give that to you, thank you both, first of all, for joining us today. It's been brilliant to talk to you. I know we tried to rearrange this interview a few times, and I'm so glad we finally managed to nail it down and get you guys on this call. So thank you ever so much for joining us. But my final question to you both, I'm interested to hear both your thoughts on this. So for any charity comms teams listening who might want to throw their hat into the ring for the next Charity Comms Team of the Year award, can you each give us one tip for creating a great team dynamic? Does it mean that we all need to spend the day paintballing, or do we bond over a cup of tea and a piece of cake? What are your tips? Katie, first off.
I mean, it's possibly like not something we say openly enough, but there are more important things in life than work. I caveat that with the fact that like I am not like a pediatric neurosurgeon, and I might feel differently if I was doing something like that. And our work is really, really important to us. It's really important to all of our team. But we are not going to do our best work unless we are understanding each other, understanding our best ways of working, understanding the challenges that we face in and outside of work, feeling able to be our authentic selves in the workplace. And that to me is like, when Laura and I came into these roles and we were looking at essentially like pretty much nothing or like a very small team, and how do we even start with this, with all these new functions coming into the charity, making this work, the words that we really wanted to build a happy team as well as a high performing team. And I feel like that's just so important, and like being emotionally intelligent as a manager and encouraging other managers in the team to take that same approach, because we're not cogs in a machine and we're not robots, and communications can be really, really stressful, and you're not necessarily always prepared for the moments when it becomes most stressful, which is in itself quite stressful. And so I think to me, that's the foundation of everything. Laura touched on it there. We're extremely busy, and we would all love more time in our team to really think and breathe and like get everything just as we want it to be so that we can launch these big moments. And that, it's hard to control that with a big charity like ours. When at kind of the root of it, the team are feeling happy and they get why they're there and they get how they're contributing to the strategy, and they know that their manager's going to have their backs if they need some time, or if they feel that their workload is getting too big, it creates a nice kind of supportive culture. And I think that's the thing I think I'm proudest of, is that I feel like we've got a good supportive culture in a team that is spread from every corner of the UK, that has a whole variety of different caring and responsibilities and different challenges. And yet I think we feel like one team, which is no mean feat really. And paintballing, no, I can't see us doing that, to be honest with you. If the risk assessment would be too challenging for me and Laura to fill out, for one thing. But we have attempted crazy golf, didn't we, Laura, last year? Indoor crazy golf, and we managed to do that without anyone severely injuring themselves. So yeah, that in-person time is really important, but we're not going to get that all the time, so we have to make it work in the gaps in between that as well.
Excellent. And Laura, assuming paintball's out, what's your top tip?
Wow, there you go. Yeah, I was just writing down paintballing, but I'll take it out now. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to kind of add to what Katie said. I think just being authentic, and Katie said around bringing your authentic self to work, but just feeling that you're kind of comfortable in that environment, that you're respected, that you're valued. All of those things are just so important between all of us as colleagues. And we want to, as much as possible, like really kind of respect those, what we're kind of calling in terms of the subject matter expertise, because we might have teams of people who do kind of similar work, but we also have kind of individuals who they are like the subject matter experts kind of across the whole charity. So our copywriter or our multimedia producer. And we absolutely want that kind of respect for them. We want to give them as much kind of autonomy within the work to make those decisions, to make those sign-offs, to bring that creativity. That's what we will kind of foster, because I think that's where you kind of get that sense of achievement from work and your kind of connection with your colleagues. And there's so much that comes into it. So that is kind of the culture. We want people to be kind of swinging big, essentially, kind of as much as they possibly can without, kind of too many risks associated with it. Definitely not on the paintballing side. And just to like bring your kind of best selves and kind of bring your, do your best work.
And can I just add that isn't just Laura and me or the kind of other managers in our team. It's like a culture that has been embedded really well at the DofE over recent years of like, we have our values in place and we live them. They're not just like a checkbox exercise. They're really important to the organisation. And so that's given us that ability to do that, to be able to confidently say like, this is the culture we want to create. And so, it is a great charity to work for generally. But just add that as a last point.
Brilliant way to end. Thank you both ever so much for your time today. It's been fascinating, and congratulations once again on the award. It's thoroughly well deserved. So thank you both ever so much.
Thank you both very much. Thanks.
In every episode of The Charity Show, we celebrate the amazing people making a real impact, whether they're working, volunteering or fundraising in the charity sector. And we want to hear from you. Got someone in mind who deserves a shout out? Drop us an email at thecharityshowpod@gmail.com or use the links in the show notes. You can even send us a voice message. We might just feature it in the next episode. Right then, Piers, who for you is in the spotlight this week?
I've got a fantastic one this week, Tim. It's a young man who's got an epic cycling challenge ahead of him. He's a determined student planning to cycle 2,500 kilometres across 9 different countries to raise funds for the fight against breast cancer after his own mum overcame the disease. As Jesper, and I'm going to get his surname wrong, but I think it's Jesper Hartikainen, pedals 200 kilometres a day from London to the Finnish capital, Helsinki. He said his mum will often be on his mind. Mr. Hartikainen, I'm going to call him Jesper from now on, obviously. He was only 21 and he's in his second year at the University of Bristol when he got the dreaded call about his mum's diagnosis. She went on to have radiotherapy and operations for the breast cancer that she was diagnosed with, but fortunately she caught it early and made a full recovery. So now Jesper wants to raise money for Prevent Breast Cancer, which aims to stop the disease through early diagnosis and lifestyle changes. Jesper studies economics at the University of Bristol, said, and this is his quote, "Mum was so lucky that it was caught early. I know people who haven't been so lucky and it's exponentially worsened." So he's training hard for his cross-continental cycle, which will see him pedal through France, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and finally Finland. And he goes on to say that when he first proposed the idea, Mum thought I was mental. Jesper says, "I'm not surprised that she did." But he goes on to say, "I've kept saying I'm doing it, and now she's really on board. She's even taking a sabbatical and spending some of it following me in the support car." Jesper grew up in Weybridge in Surrey, but much of his family now lives over in Helsinki, and I think he starts his epic cycle challenge in a couple of months' time. So all behind you there, Jesper. An amazing amount of distance for an amazing cause.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with his mum, though. That does sound mental to me. I'm not much of a cyclist. Are you a cyclist?
I am, yeah. But, you know, the odd 5 or K, 2,500 kilometres is quite some time. There's going to be a lot of saddle soreness there, I would have thought.
Yeah, geez, yeah. No thanks. Rather him than me on that one. So good luck with that, Jesper. Amazing stuff. So this is quite a coincidence, really. We hadn't planned this at all, Piers, but we haven't mentioned the traitors at all in any previous episodes. Now we're mentioning it twice in the same episode. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, this story is about a Kent school's staff and students, which have been taking part in their own charity version of the hit TV show, The Traitors. So Highworth Grammar School in Ashford has been holding a weekly roundtable and banishment where students and staff guess which of the 24 competing teachers are faithful and which are traitors. This will mean nothing to you, Piers, because you've not seen it. You've got no idea what this is about.
Gobbledygook.
The event, which has been running for the past 6 weeks, is raising money for Ashford and Tenterden Samaritans. Physics teacher Lathan Norton, what a great name that is. Lathan Norton, that's a cracking name, Lathan. He volunteers for the Samaritans branch and has organised the event. And he said everyone has really got into it and it's been fantastic to see how everyone plays the game. Mr. Norton said, I am a Traitors fan. I knew I wanted to organise a fundraising event for the school and I knew that I wanted it to fundraise for Samaritans. But I thought, why not do something a little bit different that brings the school community together? So the school has been hosting a lunchtime event every Thursday where teachers do a challenge, have a round table, just like in the show, and staff members get banished. Pupils and staff give a charity donation to watch. I think that's a fantastic idea, brilliant idea. And the story's on the BBC website, and you have to go and check out the photograph of Lathan in a Claudia Winkleman wig. Not a Cardi there. I don't think there's a Cardi there. But in a Claudia wig, ready for the event. So obviously he's playing the Claudia role in that. But yeah, good on them. What a great and unique fundraising idea. Brilliant stuff.
And I've got the massive hint, Tim. I need to go away and watch The Traitors, and anything that's got the word banishment in it, which has got all the hyperbole you want. And that's a wrap for episode 23. A huge thanks to Katie and Laura for helping ensure we don't feel quite so out of touch with the younger generation, and for giving us an insight into their incredible comms work. And there's lots more coming up, both in the main show and on the charity show Bites.
Absolutely. In the next show, we're going to be asking whether charities' use of imagery and photography could actually be doing them and their beneficiaries more harm than good. Fascinating stuff coming up in just 2 weeks' time. And Piers and I will actually be back next Monday for another The Charity Show Bites, so keep an ear out for that.
And don't forget, you can be part of the charity show too. Whatever your role in the third sector, send us your voice messages or get in touch through any of the links in the show notes to share your stories and let us know what topics you'd like us to cover.
And of course, we also want to hear about your superstar fundraisers, volunteers or colleagues. So head to the show notes and tell us all about them.
In the meantime, please follow or subscribe on your usual podcast platform and leave us a 5-star review. It really helps more people find the show.
So that's it for episode 23. Thanks for listening. Go watch The Traitors. Take care, and we'll see you soon.